Hello and welcome to Highlights Presents the State of B2B Marketing. Just want to start with some housekeeping notes here. If you guys have any questions throughout the presentation today, feel free to ask them through the control panel on the right side of your screen. Don't worry about taking notes. We'll send a recording and a follow-up email to everyone attending. If you want to live tweet throughout the webinar, feel free to use the hashtag on the screen, #highlights. And if you have any questions for us, or there's something that we don't cover today, feel free to reach out to us via email at contact@heilmangroup.com. So to use the control panel on the right side of the screen, you can raise your hand by clicking the hand button if you have a technical issue, and someone from our team will reach out to help solve that. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to type them in the text box and send us over the questions. So I'd like to introduce today's moderator, our fearless leader and president at Heilman Group, Tom Heilman. Tom has over 20 years experience in the marketing and information technology field and is an expert in business growth and marketing for a number of industries, including healthcare, B2B, finance, and manufacturing. So Tom, take it away.
Thanks, Scott. Hopefully I can live up to that introduction. So I'm very pleased today for the panel discussion. I'm very excited to talk about the state of B2B marketing, and specifically the gentlemen in the room with us today represent some great companies and some diverse industries in what they do, but all centered in B2B. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming and joining us today and providing kind of the background and what you're seeing in the marketplace. We'll go through and do a quick, brief introduction of each of you so that everyone online can get a background of that. I'll start with you, Jeff. Jeff Feisty, he's the VP of Digital Demand Activation at Gojo Industries. And good afternoon. And then Rick Shimko, VP of Marketing at Corporate United. And Peter Ignastos, who's the VP of Marketing at MCPC. And gentlemen, I'd like you to spend maybe just 30 seconds kind of introducing each of your firms, yourself, and your background and the role that you play. Jeff, if you would start?
Sure, my pleasure. Again, my name is Jeff Feisty. Fortunate enough to lead the Digital Demand Activation team at Gojo. It's a fancy name, fancy title, but basically it's a convergence between our e-commerce business and our digital marketing business all under one team. You may be familiar with Gojo. You might be more familiar with Purell Instant Hand Sanitizer. That's our lead brand, and very happy to be here today, Don.
Thanks, Jeff. Rick?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Rick Shimko. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Corporate United. We are the nation's largest indirect GPO, so group purchasing organization. What that is, we have almost 400 members, enterprise-sized members that we help with sourcing contracts for anything from office products to uniforms and mats, background checks across a number of 30 to 40 different categories. I lead the marketing team. We're primarily responsible for demand creation, sales enablement, and revenue acceleration.
Thank you, Rick. Peter?
Peter Anagnostis, Vice President of Marketing, MCPC, a national technology company headquartered in Cleveland. We do business extensively throughout the Great Lakes states. I have been on board at MCPC for, I think today, maybe a year of an anniversary, or getting a lot of LinkedIn congratulations, so I'm guessing it's a year. We're a technology company that's been MCPC since 2012, but our roots go back to 1964 when we grew out of a office supply company, and in fact, when we get into marketing challenges a little bit later, that'll come back into play.
Great, thank you, Peter. So I think we'll kick off. We're going to do kind of panelists round robin style here today so that we can hear from everybody. We'll also ask each of the gentlemen some specific questions given their background or the industry that they're in. So Scott, if you would, we'll start with the first question. So Jeff, we'll start with you. How would you describe the current marketing landscape in your industry? And of course you have kind of two facets to that, both the B2B and the B2C side. So what are you seeing right now?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, actually, I mean, that's probably one of the key characteristics of our business is that we do participate in both B2B and B2C. So and there's also a tale of definitely of two cities, right? In the B2B space that we're seeing today, We're still seeing marketing from more of a traditional space where it's much more of a push, working with frontline field sellers and actually driving awareness and consideration for for the end users. Now I say that we're beginning to start to see more adoption of digital marketing tactics that actually get end users more aware of products and actually pull through distribution. But it's still much in the early stages. Now on the B2C, completely different, right? We're seeing much more activity when it comes to digital marketing, creating that awareness, consideration, and also all the way to conversion, and actually being able to drive that demand. So again, a little bit of both worlds.
Great. Rick, I know you're in B2B, so if you want to speak to your industry specifically.
Sure. So the GPO industry is interesting. There's not a lot of players in it, and while we're in our 20th year, it's not very mature, and especially from a marketing standpoint. When you look at even some of the ecosystem around what we do, we deal with consultants and certain others, nobody's really taken a leadership charge from a marketing standpoint, which gives a great opportunity for us at Corporate United. And I have a little bit of a background on the tech side as well, so one of my goals is to bring sort of the technology-based marketing perspective into what we're doing. So great opportunity from a digital standpoint, great opportunity from a content creation standpoint. Those are some of the things we're focusing on as we try to build an audience for GPO in general.
That sounds like an exciting time. Peter, I know you mentioned before from the 1960s to today, so a little bit about around your industry.
So, technology is turning an interesting corner right now. I mean, when you think of the advent of the personal computer, 1985, 1986, really heady days throughout the 80s into the 90s. The technology was new, it was fresh, a lot of people were buying it, and it was very much a sales-driven approach. And the need for marketing was minimized. Get out, knock on the doors, sell, and the good news was people were buying, and people were buying in great volume, and the margins in the technology field were ample. Those margins have shrunk over time. There's a lot more competition. There was a time when you could only buy the kind of product that we sell, desktops, laptops, tablets, whatever it was back in the 90s. You could only buy those from a company like MCPC. There wasn't an Amazon.com version of technology, CDW, whatever that is today. There's a lot more opportunity out there, and we are in a place right now as a company where we still have a little bit of, just get out and sell, but recognizing that there's a need for much more demand generation, new customers, new acquisition, and new services as well. So the story goes from, I'm selling the device that we all have before us versus I'm selling all of the services and solutions that go along with that device. And how do you make that better known?
Yeah, that's a great challenge, right? As technology adoption has increased, so the billions of devices in the world, we'll talk probably a little bit later about the emergence of ransomware and all the security and other issues that come with that, right? So it's a very challenging time going from more of a product-based marketing to more overall solutions.
Yeah.
Which is across the board in B2B. Great, thank you. I think the next question would be, and Rick, I'll start with you here. So marketing as a seat at the table now, and we've seen more and more success visibly from the C-level. How do you measure success, both for yourself, your team, and projecting that into your organization?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and that's been very part to my tenure at Corporate United. I've been there for about 15 months now, and one of the key things I needed to do coming in was really integrate marketing into the organization. Marketing had sort of been on its own island, and as a service organization to sales and to some other parts of the business. And because of that, we didn't really have a stake in the game, right? Our goals weren't aligned with the rest of the organization from an individual level. So to level set everything, as this being the first full year in my role, I made it clear with my peers on the leadership team that I wanted my team to have a piece of the company's success and be part of their incentive package. So we can measure that, right? Now we can measure whether or not my team's contributing to the progress of a given program, solution, or category. So within that, now we can break things down. And speaking specifically about my team, we look at four metric buckets. One of them being readiness. So for any given program we're running, do we have the data we need? Do we have the content we need? Things like that. And then we look at the activities we're running, and are we, for every email we send, are we sort of hitting the mark, what we want from an open rate, click-throughs, social promotion? Are we kind of hitting that minimal threshold benchmark of like 1% engagement? That carries over into output. Are we producing demand? Are we creating demand for our sales organization? What are the numbers around that? And ultimately, and this is kind of the hardest thing for us to track, and we're working on, is impact, right? At the end of the day, are the activities and everything we're executing on influencing the positive results we're looking to from a business standpoint? From an organizational level, we really boil it down to three key metrics. It's net new members, so adding to the growth of our membership as a group purchasing organization, increasing the number of contracts that our members are on with our supplier partners, and then sort of the average of that is utilization rate. So what is the average number of contracts each member is using? Moving any of those levers in the positive direction is key for our business.
Absolutely. So excellent. So you have a very detailed kind of metrics-based view from the individuals, so they can see how they impact the overall organization, all the way through to the kind of the fundamental three drivers for the overall organization's growth.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. Well, it's never done, right? It's never finished, right? We're continually refining that as we go. And that's the beauty of, I think, the space of digital marketing today, right? We've never been able to have more visibility into our impact on revenue and on margin itself. Peter, could you speak to that a little bit in terms of how you guys measure success at MCPC?
Yeah, I pick up on a little bit of what I said in the last question, and a little bit of the Charles Dickens line, right? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And it's the best of times for us because we're seeing exceptional success on our revenue lines and our margin lines, and what we are selling, we're selling pretty well. But again, the ability for us to provide our account managers with new leads is going to be the measure of our success, as well as the struggle that we're in right now. The message for our team is, because we are a little bit of a new marketing organization at MCPC, I'm not talking about individuals on the team, but just the way that we approach sales and marketing is we have to be extremely integrated into the goals of not only the company, but the goals of sales. And really what Rick just said, I would echo, readiness, activities, demand. But thinking in each of those categories about how we've been doing business and whether that's been truly successful, or is it just action and activity without the outcome, to being able to end the week showing measurable impact on the organization, where the organization ends up having to hire 3 or 4 new account managers to handle the potential that's out in the marketplace for what we do. So, the team understands that. I think the organization is coming together in a way where we recognize all of the shifts that are taking place, and that feels good, but it's also a big challenge for us.
It's a dynamic time in the technology industry.
Very, very dynamic.
And so I think, Jeff, one of the things I heard from Peter was he talked about a little bit what I call the difference between activity and achievement, right? Mm-hmm. And so we can measure conversion rates and some of those things which are important to measure for best practices and how we do things. But at the end of the day, it's also about producing, whether it's new members, whether it's producing new leads, new revenue, right? Well, when you look at Gojo and you look at the metrics, where do you guys start?
Yeah, what's interesting too, Tom, is what I love about these type of panel discussions is that when I get to listen to how other folks are doing their business, and it helps reinforce what we're doing or gives me different ideas of where we might be doing, it makes this really valuable. So I appreciate that. I mean, we have the basic ones that I call almost like table stake metrics, right? And whether they're down to the campaign or an aggregate, what are our campaigns doing? What type of traffic are we seeing? What type of results are we seeing from campaigns, and et cetera. We also add those table stake metrics about what we're doing on our website or what we're seeing from a social engagement. But when we think about how do we help support our business, we kind of look at it from three different perspectives. We really do focus on our distributors. So we have a number of distributor metrics that we're measuring our team against, and really the organization measures us against. And that is, in a nutshell, it's what level of engagement are we working with our distribution? How are we helping them sell better on their sites? How are we helping them use our tools to generate more demand for products, right? So how do we make them more relevant? The second piece of it's all around end users. Traditional demand generation, if you will. How are we working with our marketing partners to help generate demand at the end user level, to be able to pull that in as leads, run it through our system, connect it to our CRM system, and be able to deliver it to our distributors to help them sell. And the third level of it is our business objectives. So we participate in a number of different businesses, whether it's healthcare, food service, professional markets as well. And so how do we work with our business leaders to help them achieve their business objectives, just as the digital marketing piece of their overall marketing strategies?
No, that's great. I think we'll probe on a couple of things a little later. One on your distribution, because that's a little different as opposed to direct to the business or direct to the consumer. And then the business segments are always interesting too, because you have a diverse business from hospitals to education to government, right? And so it's quite a lot to cover.
Absolutely. Each one, even though you would think they would be very similar, they're not. The business objectives and how they go to market are completely different.
Right. I think the next question, Scott. So we'll sprinkle in, I guess, an individual perspective here, Peter. You spent much of your career in the nonprofit sector, and then you've recently, I think in the last year, or maybe this year today, are now in kind of the for-profit sector. Could you speak maybe a little bit about how it's similar, how the spaces are similar, and perhaps what the differences are, what you've seen?
Similar in the sense that you're still measuring, in the nonprofit sector is no margin, no mission,
Right.
and you really needed to show if you were on a model of getting grants from foundations or support from corporations or membership, you really had to show an impact. You needed to show an impact in the community. I spent several years at the Museum of Natural History in Cleveland. I was not doing marketing there. I was more essentially running the sales organization. That was the fundraising organization. But everything that we did on that side, we also did on the marketing side to make sure that that the museum's strengths were clearly understood by the community, what we did, why we should be valued, how we embrace the community, education that we offer. It was the same in the sense that messaging was so critically important to define success. And without it, it's the light under the bushel. It's, that organization discovered Lucy. When Science Magazine said what were the 10 most important discoveries of the 20th century, that was on the list. Right. If you don't know that, it makes the sell a lot harder. Right. And in the for-profit, in some ways, the for-profit's almost a kinder, gentler nation. I'm not quite sure how that happens, because you think of the nonprofit in that way, but for-profit has a lot more ability to really throw a lot more at a problem than a nonprofit does. Nonprofits tend to be really tight on resources and revenue. And yet at the same time, you know, the challenges are the same. So.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's interesting to often people think about the opposite way.
Yeah.
You do in the for-profit, the business where we have much more resources, whether it's people, budgets, or just the size of our organizations that we can bring the lever. So much more what I call scrappy marketing when you're in the nonprofit or the
scrappy.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
A lot of word of mouth marketing.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and in the business sector, you've got to have other means to
scale.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. So we'll go back to the general panel discussion. I think, Jeff, I'll start with you. So we talk enough in marketing advertising. We get MarTech and AdTech, and we get into our words and acronyms here. But maybe if you could describe a little bit about what your current marketing technology stack looks like and kind of how you got there.
Sure. Yeah, you know, it's we're still very much in the early stages of developing our MarTech stack. So as we look at it, we've got we feel a pretty robust CRM and content management system that's tied into our ERP system. So we feel like we're pretty well connected there at the center. What we're beginning to build out is how do we bring in our social listening tools, so that way we can not only just listen to what's happening on the social media, but also be able to take action against it. So we actually treat it as a monitoring device. And on our marketing automation piece, again, still very early in this stage, but we're trying to determine how do we use marketing automation to help create more demand generation. So from where we see that we need to go, we look pretty aspirational. So we've actually, as we're looking at new technology, we try to look at like a 4D approach. And that is to really begin with discovery, trying to understand what we are doing today and what we may need to do in the future. We have a phase which we call actually dream, and that is to start to think about where we might want to be in the future, where do we think it's going to go, and how we want to position ourselves. Then we do a lot of work in design and eventually get into a implementation phase, if you will, or develop phase, the 4C. But we take those 4 different steps as we're starting to look at new technology. So we're very young in this, but we look at opportunities to definitely grow that MarTech stack.
Nick, you know, it's seems like a rigorous some structure to the process, right? The beauty or the danger or the risk in the space is that I think when I was at the Marketo conference, there were no less than 60 new advertising technologies at the Marketing Nation, right? And so the technologies are exploding, whether it's CMS, whether it's analytics tools that fit into that. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that later, and then more of the traditional ones. So it's a very difficult time to understand what's all out there. So you kind of have to start there, test, and then figure out what works.
There's a lot of noise out there. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of different companies. I mean, the last report that I saw, there's something like 3,000 different technology companies that can help support us in doing our business, right? So it's trying to find out what actual tool we need and what really helps our business.
Great, thank you. Rick, could you chime in?
Yeah, so you know, I'm sort of lucky. I inherited a really good set of tools, really good bones coming into Corporate United. They had been using Salesforce.com for many years, and had also been sort of early adopters of HubSpot, which was marketing automation technology I had used previously and am a fan of. So one of the challenges really coming in for us was looking at how we were using the tools and then working to optimize that usage so we're getting the most out of them. You know, especially within HubSpot, as it's more prescient for my team. The social tools there, migrating our blog onto their hosting or onto their COS, I believe they call it. Just getting the most out of the tools so that we could get the most out of the tracking and the digital behavior timeline that they offer. Then we've supported those 2 tools with some point solutions. We use Vistia for video hosting. We're doing more of that as this year goes on. That's also integrated into HubSpot. And then, deciding on a new technology, that's a good question. So towards the end of the year, I started working with my team to set goals on content production for this year. And we started looking at what we needed to do, and one of the members of my team brought up the idea of content curation and how that's becoming a more hot topic. And so over Q4 of 2016, we evaluated a bunch of different vendors in there, and then took advantage of kind of that end of the year discount.
Of course.
And found a really good partner in Curata, and Nicole's been working for us. My team likes it. That's also tied into HubSpot as well. And our blog production has really skyrocketed this year, and I really point to that as being one of the reasons why. I think we'll get in later about some of the things we're going to do in the future. I will say that we are, as an organization, we're leveraging Tableau to present some reporting back to our members or customers. And I'm really anxious to start seeing how I can use Tableau from a data reporting visualization standpoint for marketing and marketing results, and tying all our data elements together.
Okay. I think we'll talk a bit about that maybe towards the end of the question area. Peter, how about yourself?
So I'm going to flip these two questions around.
Sure.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we decide on new technology. And I kind of want to throw the Heilman Group a bit of a compliment, and maybe it'll look like a softball, but it really isn't. We really, in terms of MarTech stack, we really were at a nascent phase of everything. And you know this, Tom. We've been a Heilman client for probably 4 years now, and it really was in two phases. And there was a time when our business sold about 40% of what we were doing, the server and cloud, and we were left with something, and we clearly knew that we needed to go in a slightly different direction. And Rick and Jeff both said that there's where do you need to go, and the variety and the breadth of technology and tools that are available to us now have just exploded. And I say this in all seriousness, Tom. I mean, my first inclination was to sort of turn to a company that had that expertise. That there's only so much with all that we have to do on the business side. There's only so much that even a good, strong, healthy, up-to-date marketing team is going to understand. So turning to somebody who's keeping abreast of all the new technology, is going to all the conferences, is being a good, we call ourselves as a business a trusted advisor, looking to the Heilman Group as a trusted advisor. I didn't get an extra cookie at lunch to say all of this. I want to go on record.
But you will.
It's really daunting. It's really daunting. And I said to our sales group Monday morning, I said, I go to bed at night and I ask, are we doing enough? And I wake up in the morning and I ask the same question. Right. The only thing you can really do is make sure that you're doing everything that you can possibly be doing. And sometimes, looking to experts in the field to help you achieve that is the best way to get that done.
Thanks, Peter. Very kind words. I appreciate that. And I think maybe we'll go to our next question. I think that we'll probably talk a lot about that. One of the future questions we're talking about is a little bit about innovation and roadblocks, and I think that the noise, as Jeff mentioned, is heavy, right? And it's hard to figure out. And then one of the things that also comes up is there's the old versus the new. And so I know, Rick, I'm going to point this one to you. Not that you're old or new, but in terms of you've had some great success using some very traditional tactics, so event marketing, trade shows, things like that, as well as a heavy lean on the digital. And one of the things that we talk about here at Heilman Group is that it's the right tool for the right job, right? So I wonder if you might be able to spend just a few minutes talking about, as you're looking, translating some of the traditional world into the digital and what you've seen there.
Yeah, so that's interesting question I posed when I first looked at it. I'm thinking, okay, I've been in my career now for almost 15 years, and I really was lucky that digital marketing was sort of starting to go mainstream as I started my career. But that doesn't discount that I worked with some really smart people that had been doing marketing for a really long time that taught me well on how to use print and how to use event tactics, just working with sales and business development on cold calling and scripts and creating battle cards and all of these things that were kind of the way of the world up until this notion of buyers taking the power away and being able to go online and get all the information. Thinking about that, and you mentioned event marketing. That's probably the place where traditional and digital have blended the most, because now, as whether you're hosting your own event or having presence at national events, you really have to have a seamless experience between the reality of what's going on site and on the floor, and then some kind of digital component to it to augment or support. One of the ways, I know a lot of organizations do this, but you're just surprised how much more impact and engagement you get simply by having an app. If you're hosting an event, having an app for the event, and being able to have sort of that on-site, just on-site activity and all that being tracked, letting users connect with each other through that app, having polls and having other ways for people who are there to stay tuned in. I was at the Serious Decisions event in Las Vegas in May, and without fail, pretty much after every speaker started, the laptops went up, the phones went up, whatever. But they about 5 to 10 minutes into every presentation, they had everybody pull out their phone and fill out a poll question, and you really take notice that after that part, everybody kind of stayed tuned in. It kept people engaged and tuned in. So. Just thinking of traditional and digital, it's not so much how you switch from one to the other. It's really how do you blend the two and create a seamless experience between the two, whether it's from print content to your website, from event floor to application, and social media.
Yeah, it's an omnichannel world, right? So if you think about when I was growing up, I grew up on a farm in the country. We had 3 television channels, right? And now, today, I don't even know how many thousands, millions of channels there might be, right? With YouTube and Netflix and Hulu, Crackle, all these different things, right? So while marketing has exploded and the number of tools has gotten just enormous, right? We've also dispersed our audiences over so many locations. So the ability, as you mentioned, in that conference where they're engaging on the phone, it's a multifaceted world, right? They're listening to the speaker, engaging with the brand around them and all the advertisement and everything they see with them, and in a digital device, right? So they're immersed in experience. And I think your point on that is really well taken, that the engagement goes up because of the multi-touch approach and what they're doing there. And I think that's as we look to where the world's going to go, it's a multi-device, multi-touch, multi-world. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yes, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's how do we combine the digital tactics to traditional marketing tactics also? Whether it's automating lead generation at trade shows or other types of tools where you can actually combine both of them together. I mean, there's really some neat opportunities coming up.
It was great, and hopefully at the end we'll talk a little bit about some of the ad tech, but some of the ways to integrate the I know we talked about this geo-targeting and whatnot, and especially geo-fencing around events and whatnot. You can do really sophisticated marketing and at relatively low cost that you would never be able to do before. So it's a great thing. Why don't we, so next question, what are your biggest roadblocks to driving innovation, and what do you do to overcome them? So I've heard a few. I've heard a little bit so far. There's a lot of noise in the marketplace. Peter, the question you ask yourself as you get up in the morning, you go to sleep at night, am I doing enough? I look at it in 2 phases, what you said from that. Am I being efficient, and am I being effective? Right? Am I doing things well? Am I working on the right things, right? So if we look, and then maybe, Jeff, I'll start with you here. Sure. What do you think the biggest roadblocks are now that you see in the space, and how are you working to get around this?
Actually, one of the biggest ones is the noise that you mentioned just a minute ago. But outside of that, I don't know if we come across so many roadblocks. Gojo is pretty much a learning organization. So whether it's in product or in how we go to market, we try to look at innovative ways to do that. But one of the things that I found is the level of involvement that we get senior leaders involved in projects really helps drive them better. Now, it may sound kind of counterintuitive, but no, what we found is we know our senior leaders have a lot of things going on, and the last thing they need to do is get into the weeds. We've got that. But what we've also found is that because everybody's an expert in social or everybody's an expert in digital marketing because we see it in our lives every single day. The more that we get senior leaders to understand really what we're trying to accomplish and buy in early, we find that when we are trying to implement innovation, it goes a lot smoother.
Absolutely. Peter, I'll jump to you on this one.
I mean, I think I would pick up on what Jeff kind of intimated is, you know, there has to be a buy-in throughout the organization, and especially the senior leadership. And you know, sometimes by definition, even in a technology company, which, you know, a 23-year-old can start a technology company and retire at age 26, as Kyle is working toward in his career. But, you know, the senior does imply often somebody who has been doing things a certain way for a long time, and getting that shift to occur within your own organization is sometimes, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a roadblock. I mean, MCPC is a company that's extremely open to new ideas, and you can't exist in technology without recognizing that new ideas drives everything forward. But at the same time, you really have to be able to show, we're doing it this way, this is different, and in 6 months, I will show you the ROI on it. So, you know, in the same way that the sales organization is held to their own revenue metrics, so is marketing, you know, and so what I think we do best to overcome it, and Tom, we've had this conversation as customer to, you know, vendor, is 6 months from now, you know, what am I going to be able to demonstrate as a result of bringing in the new tools? So that again is the good news in all of this.
Right. Yeah. You know, both answers are, you know, I relate to both of those. I think the same challenges are pretty ubiquitous in other organizations I've been in. You know, same thing. You know, buy-in, alignment, and shutting out the noise are key. For me and my team, another one that's critical now is just time and capacity and maximizing what we have. I think Peter made the point earlier about, are we doing, you know, all that we can or what we can in the time we have. Something I'm trying to do to overcome that is work with, you know, my peers on our leadership team to help me learn a little bit more about the business, understand some of the context of, you know, what we've done before, so I don't make those mistakes again, but also to help us get focused to what we're doing. You know, we're a 20-year-old, you know, we feel it's a 20-year-old company. We feel like a startup, and I work for startups that has that same pace. We're just in some ways frenetic. So I want to make sure that I'm guiding my team the right way. So I'm looking for support from my peers to make sure that I'm in line with them.
Great, thank you. So Jeff, I'll come back to you. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I wonder if maybe we can go, we talked about Omnichannel a bit more, and I guess from your perspective in the B2B panel, you're the one with kind of the background in having to deal with that dual-headed challenge of B2C and B2B. Could you tell me a little bit about those challenges and kind of how you've addressed that? Yeah,
I mean, you know, we're definitely seeing this convergence of, you know, B2B and B2C distributors and resellers of our products. In addition to that, more companies want to take that omni-channel approach, right? They want to be able to, from a customer's perspective, that if a customer wants to buy in a distribution location or buy online or gather information and look at pricing, that they want some seamless approach to how they buy that product. And it's becoming more and more prevalent. You know, it started in the B2C, but we're firm believers that what starts there ends up in B2B. So we're kind of seeing that as the canary in the mine, if you will, for B2B. So, you know, as we think about it, some of our challenges, we've kind of gone back to the basics, and that is the 4 Ps. You know, as we're starting to look at how do we market our products, you know, so how do we develop products that are unique for each B2B customer or B2C? How do we make sure that we're putting them in the right types of locations for those customers? You know, mistakes that we've made is designing one product and think that it goes into all channels, which it doesn't. So it's trying to be more specific. As we get into the pricing of the products, I mean, Pricing is now transparent regardless of where a customer buys a product. What they see is what they see. And so to make sure that you have the right programs put into place. The fun one, of course, is promotion, right?
Sure.
But by the same token, how we're designing our products for promotion, again, is very transparent no matter what channel that customers are buying for. But it's also one of the greatest opportunities because there's so many more tactics available for us today to be able to promote our product to those customers. And, when I think about distribution or place, you can always say, hey, they're your customers or who you sell through, but think about how we're presenting our product as part of that place. Whether it's our property or it's our customer's digital property, how do we actually present that product properly? So I know it sounds like we're going back to the old days and going back to the 4 Ps, but we're just trying to use those from a starting point in a digital world.
Well, some things in marketing don't change, right? Audience, messaging, as Peter alluded to, and call to action, right? I mean, the kind of 3 things that you always want to have happen in any advertisement or anything that you do. So what's old is new again. I'm a big believer in Stephen Covey. It's sometimes first things first, right?
That's right.
So a lot there. Scott, if you would. So I guess as we get towards the end of it here, we'll be a little bit more aspirational and looking forward. And Rick, I'll start with you. In the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see the B2B marketplace changing? What do you see coming at you?
Interesting question. And, when we saw the question a little ahead, my first instinct was 15 years in my career. I've really never thought in a 3 to 5 year span. I mean, I feel like our cycles are short and they get shorter all the time. So, even from a planning standpoint, we're, quarter to quarter, maybe we'll plan some programs out for a whole half of the year. But when you think of the B2B market changing, the one thing I do think there are technologies that are being either built or rolled out now that will impact what we're doing in 3 to 5 years. And I specifically point to data analytics, predictive analytics.
Yep.
There are some players in that space now. I've dabbled in them and looked at them. Nobody has made it easy yet. Nobody has just said, okay, this is what you do. These are the inputs, those are the outputs, and here's your recipe for success. Not that I think that anybody's going to come up with that specific of a silver bullet, but I think somebody's going to find a way to do a really good job with it and make it really intuitive for marketing teams who might not have the quants or analysts in their organization to be successful with that kind of data.
Okay. Peter, what do you see? You're uniquely positioned because you see a lot of high tech coming at you from the nature of your business, right?
Yeah, that's exactly where my head was. I mean, I'm thinking 3 to 5 years, and I'm thinking where MCPC is going is definitely in the realm of the threats that are impacting technology right now. And if audience is one of the audience is one of the staples of a marketing program, and people start to suddenly put up all sorts of fences and walls around what can come in, that digital platform gets a lot more complicated and complex. We're in a wide open world right now, and on a weekly basis, you can see how the doors and the windows and everything is closing, and
right.
That's going to impact how we talk to each other.
I mean, even today, there's the latest ransomware attack, right?
Yeah.
Probably a variant of the WannaCry or something like that.
Yeah.
In your world, it drives the need for security, but I also think it does. The question from a marketing perspective, does it also close some windows for us, right? Close some doors.
It very well could.
Right. So we'll have to be very careful in that space.
Yeah.
Jeff, what do you see?
Well, a number of different things, just kind of adding on to what Peter and what Rick were saying. But maybe I'll focus my comments around really from a sales and marketing standpoint, the disintermediation of our distribution channels and distributor sales reps.
Yeah.
I think I've seen lots of different numbers. I think you guys all have, but north of 70% of all buying decisions in the B2B space are made before that first call goes out to a distributor sales rep. And like what Peter was talking about, there was a day that, we as salespeople were involved heavily with every single sale,
right.
And that's just happening less and less. So, and I think that trend will continue for a lot of our business. I do believe that there is consultative selling out there, and that may not change as much, but when it comes to less consultative selling, we're going to have to rely more on product information on the internet, on our websites, our customers' websites, as well as the tools that these guys were talking about, such as blogs and other types of social media. But so I think that has to happen. So as we think about brands, we have to think about the types of tools that we can create, the digital selling tools that we can create to help our salespeople sell better, but also for help customers determine what they need easier and faster, if you will. So I think if we just looking at the disintermediation of that channel, how can we support that as it continues to develop?
That's the fundamental challenge of the Amazon world, right?
Correct.
Although it offers new opportunities to lots of different small businesses, which is always interesting to me. Is you think about the large manufacturers bypassing the middlemen or the distributors, right? The internet has actually created a whole new world where that is in really good shape. So I know we're running a little short on time, so we have one last question. So what we'll do is we'll break this up. So at Heilman Group, we often, I borrowed this from my entrepreneurs organization, is when we're looking at an issue or a problem, we do the stop, start, continue exercise. So what should we start doing? What should we stop doing? What should we keep doing? Well, that's working. So I'll pose one question to each of you, and I'll start with Rick. Well, we start the start side for you. What should you start doing?
Something I realized within our organization, what we need to start doing is actually is saying no, but being very judicious about how we do that. My team, they're rock stars. They do a great job, and they do really spread themselves thin by trying to give a little love across all of the different programs and categories and things that we do. And I think we should start reflecting on where are our best opportunities for success and where are those cycles where we can plan and include the right activities to get the right outputs at the right time, and really maximize the effort of what my team is doing. Saying that, it's June 28th. If you have another webinar in a year from now, bring me back and ask me how that actually went.
We'll do that one.
Yeah.
How about stop, Jeff? What should we stop doing?
You know what? It would be so easy to say, hey, stop doing all your traditional marketing things and turn everything digital. But I'm not. I don't think that's right, first of all. But when we think about stop doing things, it's about really starting to look at and measure what kind of results we're getting from all of our marketing tactics, and stop doing the ones that don't deliver results. Start really measuring, looking at what's working, what's not, and start making those changes. So what should we stop doing? Stop doing the things that aren't bringing the results that we need.
That's great. I always tell people it's good to know the ones that don't work, and we can stop doing them, right? As opposed to the old world where half the advertising didn't work, we just didn't know which ones.
That's right.
And Peter, I guess to end on you, what should we keep doing? What's timeless?
Communicating throughout the organization, making sure that everybody's on the same page, what the plan is, how it's doing, how it's impacting. Really those sort of team leadership meetings that are fundamentally focused on communication and recognizing, what the priorities are and what could be secondary and what we can just leave off the list altogether.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you. We have a few minutes left, I think, for a few questions. Scott, I believe we got a few questions from the audience. So if we can maybe start with the first one, Scott.
Yeah, so feel free to chime in if you guys have a response for this. I'm a part of a small team. How do you implement some of the strategies with a limited team or budget? And additionally, when do you realize it's time to bring in help, either through an agency or new employee?
So maybe it's a scrappy marketing, I guess. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can take that. I mean, I have a fairly small team. I mean, there's 5 of us full time, and then 2 that are part time. I mean, we really do bootstrap a lot of things. I mean, we do a lot of our own design work. We find low-cost providers for a lot of things. We watch the dollars, and we do to the point of content curation instead of sourcing a bunch of independently authored blog articles. We found a tool that helps us accelerate how much content we can produce. Sort of leveraging the other thought leaders in our space. To the point that technology can help small teams. Obviously, you have to be budget conscious across the board and manage to that. Looking for opportunities, whether it's looking for like the watering holes in your industry where people are going for content and contacting them and seeing if you can guest post on their sites. We've had some success with that, and that doesn't cost anything but just your time to put the content together.
Okay. Great. Scott, what's the next question?
What's the ideal structure of a marketing team, and what positions, roles, or skill sets need to be considered for a full team?
I don't know, Peter or Jeff, either one of you? Go ahead.
We're a small, scrappy team as well, and that ideal structure, I mean, we're sitting across the street from Progressive Field right now, and there are 9 people on that team and a manager, and they each have a position to play, and the manager knows those positions, and they still play as a team, and we've really tried to organize ourselves around particular positions, particular roles, but around, and it's not me, but just decent management, decent, here's the game plan, here's how we're going to win, I think that makes it a lot easier on everyone.
So I'll go off script for a second, because sometimes I do. And Jeff, I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
One of the things that I've thought about, and you mentioned it before, is people talk about the change in the sales cycle. And I personally don't think the sales cycle has actually changed at all in length. I think just the nature of the sales cycle has changed, that where it used to be 80 or 90% sales and 10 to 20% marketing, now it's about 60 to 70% marketing, 30 to 40% sales. What are your thoughts there? I think you alluded to that a little bit before, and I just want to get your thoughts on the buyer journey, the interaction, the change in sales and marketing over the last decade, we'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, there was a time, you're right, that it was definitely much more, marketing had a such smaller role and sales had a such larger role, and I think that has switched. And I think primarily it's because of the end user has switched, and that is that they have started asking for information earlier in the formats that they want to get it. And that doesn't mean that a salesperson is going to be around. So marketing has to play a bigger role. Marketing has to look at the traditional selling cycle that your business goes through and realize, how might I be able to digitize that so that way the end user gets what they're looking for. So if you traditionally have have sales folks that help customers make which product selections, if there's ways that you can do that digitally, so then that way, it helps your salespeople be more successful, but also gets the customers the information they want to choose your right product, that's where marketing can play a bigger role.
Okay. I think that was the last question from the audience. Was that correct?
Yep.
Like I said, maybe we'd end with leaving one final thought from each of you. If you could leave the audience with, I think, what would be a key takeaway, or what you may have learned from today's interactive discussion? To me, it's interesting. I learn a lot more, even though we're asking all the questions. I feel like I get more of the value out of it. If you could leave, what would be your key takeaway that you may have heard today? So Rick, I don't know if you wouldn't mind starting there.
So I think what I heard is, with my fellow panelists, is that even though we're in different industries, we still have the same challenges, and we're addressing them with, I think, the right thought and kind of in the same ways, which is good. I think, once we identify where our challenges are as a group, we can start working to solve for them. I will say the one thing, that I'm taking from this is, we need to keep taking chances, right? We need to try new things. We need to see what works. We need to see what doesn't work, and share those experiences with each other.
Great. Peter?
Yeah, I'll make it easy. I totally agree. Whatever Rick just said is these types of forums, conferences, anything that you're doing to put yourself and your team in front of other individuals, recognizing that the same challenges are out there and that somebody has probably already come up with a solution.
Okay. I guess we'll close with you, Jeff.
The last word, huh?
The last word.
I love what these guys said earlier when they said the word scrappy marketers, right? And because I thought that was really, really hit home. I guess my departing words would be test and learn, which is really kind of saying the same thing these guys said, and that is, we're all small marketers. This is a whole new space to play in, and the only way we're going to learn how to do this is to test, to try. So I would say, even with small budgets, you can test and learn, and you can learn a heck of a lot. So
thank you. So gentlemen, thank you for taking the time out of your day, for sharing the thoughts and the insights that you have. I've learned a lot. I think the most exciting thing to me is that People ask me about the marketing industry. I've never been more excited because you think about the tools, the change from sales and marketing mix. I think we're uniquely positioned in our industry to have a huge impact on our companies, right? And just the digitization of business and where we're going on that. So I appreciate you all sharing that and sharing your thoughts today. Scott, were there anything to wrap up with?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today. Thank you to the panelists for joining us and providing some insights on the industry. Just to close out, we'll be sending a recording of this session out to everyone that attended and registered. And a reminder that our next webinar is on July 26th. We'll be covering UX and UI tips for your next website redesign, and that'll be a partner webinar with Kentico.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.